Hi, I'm Rika Brandon, recruiting and retention expert with Building Gurus, where we help building products leaders find, hire, and keep the people they need to achieve their business goals. So, this week's quick tip is about how to network even if you're an introvert. And so, I want you to recognize that my intention here is that I am an extrovert. So, don't think I'm going to give you the same tips that would work for somebody who's wired like myself, because they wouldn't, right? We're not wired the same. We don't approach it the same way. These tips come from me being married to an introvert who's an awesome human being. However, he's not super excited about walking up and meeting strangers, right? So these tips really come from a place of people who are maybe early in their career, people who are much more of like, hey, I recharge by being by myself. Like, I'm good. People are fine, but in regulated doses. So keep in mind, when I share these, they're meant to be applicable to everyone. And they should be acceptable and easily accessible even to those who are feeling really nervous about their first networking event or their 31st, right? So these are the tips that I think will really change how you approach that event and will help you feel much more comfortable. So the first thing is recognize how brave you are to decide to go. Like, I applaud you to put your career, your profession ahead of your discomfort, puts you in a very small group of high performers. So first off, awesome. You're already ahead of the curve. And I love that, right? So with that, I want you to know that when you go to that networking group and maybe there's 60 people there, about 25% of them probably feel exactly the way you do. And that isn't a stat based on anything. It might be higher. I doubt very much it's lower, but about 25%. So out of a group of 60, that's 15 people. So 15 of those 60 people are feeling the same level of trepidation and uncertainty that you're feeling. So you have some people out there who want somebody else to talk to as well, right? So the first thing is, I want you to walk in and just look around. You know, you can hang your coat up if you're in the North Country like us. You know, you can look around for a seat. I wouldn't recommend picking a seat yet. I would look around to see somebody else who's standing alone and looks kind of uncomfortable, right? So maybe they're standing there and they're worried about sitting down, or maybe they are sitting down, but there's nobody by them and they're just sitting there. I would kind of avoid the person who's heavily into their phone. One, they're using it as a masking technique, or two, they're actually trying to get some work done. So in the interest of that, it would be better if they weren't dove into their phone, because you're looking for somebody who else wants to actually network at this event. So I encourage you to look around. It is very rare that you won't see anyone unless you're super duper early, and then you might be the person standing around alone for a while, but then you can go and find somebody else. So this doesn't change if you're the first one. It just shifts the timing, right? So with that, I want you to look for that person who's standing alone and feels a little bit uncomfortable, and just walk over and say, hi, I'm Rika. What's your name? And they'll answer. I mean, if they like run away from you, that's a weird situation. I don't think it's going to happen. And then you can have your easy rapport. So we find somebody that looks approachable who's standing alone. And that's really all it is. Like, they have to be standing alone and not look like they're super angry, right? Then we go over and introduce ourselves. And then we seek to find a connection point. And so that's the part where we have small talk, right? And I always say this: curiosity is like the best thing ever for small talk. So, oh, how long have you worked there? Oh, okay. So what do you do? What is an account manager for XYZ company? So you're asking questions. And that's one thing that I will know that I do believe deeply that introverts are great at. They're great at asking questions and listening to the answers. And so come up with some 3-5 questions that you can always rely on to ask. Super simple ones are like, your name, where do you work, what do you do? Tell me more about what you do. Oh, so who are the customers, or whatever. Like, follow-up questions around that, especially at a networking event, are completely appropriate, and people will open up because that's easy to talk about. And many people will ask you in return. Not all, but many will ask you those questions in return, right? So you've got it, and now you've got somebody you're standing with, you're having a conversation. And that's really where all of a sudden it feels easier. Now, you've heard things of like, oh, you should be talking to somebody new every 5 minutes, or, at least, do this. But the old adage of find 3 people to connect with is awesome. But here's the deal. Like, do that on your 5th networking event. Right now, that walking up to that one stranger and starting that conversation is huge. So take it, even if you don't talk to anyone else the rest of the networking event, you did a huge thing. Now, when you want to level up, the next thing is like, hey, okay. Oh, also, you should say, hey, do you want to sit together? And then you could go and find a spot. I will tell you this: if the person is a real dud and you're like, you can always be like, hey, I got to go to the bathroom. or whatever. And then you can just do it again and find somebody else who's standing alone. Or, I might have to get a drink or whatever. Whatever your reason to extract from the conversation that's going nowhere quickly, just use it and start over when you come back into the room and look for somebody else. So with that, once you've got the comfort of like, okay, I can find somebody else who's standing alone and I can talk to them, you can add to it, right? You can invite people into your group if they're looking lost, right? Like, hey, what are you doing here? Like, join us. And then all of a sudden you're a social butterfly and you never even saw it coming. So with that, I hope it helps as an easy way to start making networking something that doesn't feel quite so terrifying and suddenly starts to feel a lot more approachable. All right, if you like this video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel to get notified when I drop the next one. If you are a building products professional who would like to be made aware of building opportunities in the building products area, please register with us at buildinggurus.com/register. Otherwise, I wish you the best and happy hiring.